What do we learn today from this Arsenal performance that took them, for the time being, to the Premier League summit?
I don't know if I just learned it today, but I think we're looking, we're watching the best team in the Premier League right now. So, this is a team that, I don't know, gave Liverpool or the league couple mulligans. I mean, no shame on them. The points they've lost was against Liverpool, right, with that great screamer from Szoboszlai in a game that they shouldn't lose. They should have gotten some. Was even. Played Manchester City off the pitch. That's another points dropped. No shame in that. Obviously, you play, top teams playing against top teams, but I think in the meantime, when you look at the way they dealt with the game with West Ham, it's a London derby, you wouldn't know it, right? I mean, total domination without breaking a sweat.
Yeah, it was two going on, goodness knows how many for Arsenal. They took their time to open the scoring, but that doesn't mean they didn't create a lot before they eventually got the opening goal. But prior to that opening goal, Martin Ødegaard, twice he went down after colliding knees. I think it was with Crescencio Somerville. And he tried to play on, and then ultimately he couldn't. Now, if that's just a one-off, then you hope he gets better soon. But the fact that that's 3 consecutive games in a row for Arsenal that he's had to be replaced in the first half, should this be depending on the severity and if it's something he's been dealing with that's similar to the ones in the past, should this be a case of, look, next time he comes back, make sure he is totally 100% ready?
Yeah, I think he was totally 100% ready, though, in this one. A great thing, he got injured while making a great tackle, great defensive play on Somerville, by the way, which is good at. The bad news, we saw Odegaard at his best, before the injury last season when he was outstanding. And remember, for the rest of the season, they struggle without him. There's no questions about that. You saw, consequently, that even in today's game, Saka, who's dealing with some injuries over the time, back at his best. There's no coincidence, right? These two are getting reacquainted. So, yes, you never know what that's going to be. I suppose good news is there's international break. Maybe it's just a knock. Is that bad news? Of course it is. But then again, you look at what happened when Zubimendi comes in, right? A wonderful through ball to Eze on the first goal, right? That Declan Rice ultimately scored. So they have players that they can come in. But let's not forget that I think in the game against Newcastle, for me, when he came into that game, Odegaard, that is, the game changed. They found a winner late. He was the best player on the pitch against Olympiacos. And today, the start of the game was wonderful, not just for Odegaard, but as I mentioned, for that partnership with Saka and everybody else. So, yes, you worry. Yes, you want him at his best. I thought he was just coming in finally to his best. It's a different type of injury. But yeah, he's going to be super important if Arsenal are to win the Premier League.
Yeah, you mentioned that squad depth for Arsenal, and that's something that's crucial because we've spoken a lot about needing a striker. They went and got a striker. They went and got Zubimendi. Calafiori's doing well on the left-hand side. Saka's back from injury. Timber, obviously what happened to him last season when he picked up that injury early doors and missed big chunks. There's a lot of relationships developing now, whether it's Timber and now Saka down the right-hand side. Let's take a look at the opening goal. The effort is a decent one by Eberechi Eze, and it's a good follow-up. Whether or not Declan Rice is in that position or a little bit deeper if Ødegaard is still on the field of play, we'll never know, but he takes it very well. And it's kind of similar because Eze's got a chance, 10, 15 minutes before that it came to him a lot quicker, but he couldn't adjust his body and he fired over. But I thought Declan Rice's body shape was absolutely perfect for the opening goal.
Yeah, it was. And as I mentioned, Zubimendi, one of his few first touches, I didn't count him, but got on the pitch and a perfectly weighted ball. You can't overlook that pass, right? Especially when you have somebody like Odegaard leaving, right? Yeah. So that was good. Yeah, Eze had a sitter. He should have scored, early on and opened the scoring. Perhaps, it wasn't a good game for him. I don't want to say the worst player, but, obviously he's going to have to readjust. And Declan Rice against his former team, obviously, there are no question marks about Declan Rice. Steady Eddie as they come anywhere in the world and always puts in a performance. So, that finish seemed easy. It kind of never is, right? From that distance. It's superb. It's almost everything's perfect, right? With the exception of maybe, you say still Gyökeres. I know he's got the three goals in the Premier League, and that's not bad, right? When you come over and you're trying to adjust, but still, to me, he looks cumbersome. I still don't see that explosiveness, that we saw at Sporting Lisbon, the ability to run behind, the ability to run at players. Obviously, the work ethic is great and all of that. But, when we talk about number nines and best strikers in the world that are playing for, one of the best teams in the world, you don't really want to talk about defensive ability. So it's not bad. Again, 3 goals in the Premier League, fair play. And maybe he's still developing, getting used to the. But that's one area that I'm still not convinced when it comes to Gyökeres.
Is Gyökeres trying too hard?
I don't know if it's, it's an intricate game when you come into Arsenal. We've talked about these partnerships, right? On the right-hand side, when everybody's available, that's easy. I think he's going to get lots of top-ins, right? If Odegaard and Saka work, then Gyökeres is going to work, because what do? They combine on the right-hand side. Saka usually gets played into the byline and gets the ball crossed back, right? Or does it himself, and so that's good. On the left-hand side, we've seen Martinelli starting to look much, much better. Trossard does his thing when he comes in or from the start. So I think it can develop. It's an intricate game and not an easy one at Arsenal, I suppose.
The reason I ask, he'll always put a shift in, Gyökeres, and it was near the end of the game. He's made a run down the left. It's a brilliant run. He's taken the touch. He's got beyond the defender and he's cut it back, and there's nobody there. And you kind of you don't want him to kind of settle down a little bit and kind of not give the same as he's giving. I think you've summed it up well. Maybe he's just a confidence player. Maybe he's just trying too hard to fit in right now, whereas things might just come to him once things start to click. And he might end up just being the penalty box player that gets 10, 15 goals a season by not doing much more than that.
I think that's going to be his game, because, 90% of the games that Arsenal are going to play are going to be against teams that are going to defend deep. And at Sporting, he wasn't like that. He had room, right? On breaks, I want to see, because there's going to be those few games, whatever percentage of the games, where Arsenal will play on the break, and that's where you're going to probably see Gyökeres at his best. So it's not an easy one. I think he's got to be patient. I think he's got to move less, sit in front of that goal, 6 yard back, 6 to 8 to 10 yards, and wait for the wingers to cut the ball back and put them away. Those chances are going to come, and when they come, he's going to have to be clinical. Otherwise, there's going to be no place for him.
I think the only doubt about the penalty was whether or not it was inside or outside the box. Only a hold can constitute a continuation.
That's what I thought. You spot on, Mark.
Yeah, it's one of these. Is there enough evidence? Because if it's on the line, it's considered inside. Is there enough evidence to overturn following the challenge? It's a foul on Timber.
Yes, there is. That's a foul before not inside the penalty area. That shouldn't have been a penalty. Having said that, the handball. Remember, Mavropanos. To me, that's a penalty from that distance. This wasn't close. He was kind of sideways. I don't know if that was a natural way of approaching that. You may have to take a look at it again, right? Because it's hard to explain. But that, to me, that handball was more of a penalty. This one, for me, it wasn't. It doesn't change anything, because Arsenal would have found a way, I suppose. And, very few questions about them, with the exception of maybe, I still have some about Mikel Arteta from, but that's a hard job.
Yes, we've heard those before. So Saka scores the goal. 100 goal involvements for Arsenal in the Premier League, which is phenomenal. What's the difference between Arsenal with Saka playing, coming in from the right, and Arsenal when Saka's unavailable?
Because simply, he's got so many ways of beating you. Defenders are afraid of him. I've been a defender myself, and there's always few players where he's got the ability to do everything. And I was playing as a left fullback, so I would have been on his side. And he can take you to the end line on the right side. He can come inside. He can dribble past you. So it's those players that can beat you on the spot, because he doesn't need a lot of space, right? He's quick enough, and obviously, if you give him space, then forget it. If you don't have the pace, you're not going to be able to keep up with him. But now I think, his Arsenal, no pun intended, or pun intended, I guess, his arsenal and variety, I suppose, of what he can do is such that for a defender, unless you get help, very few in the world can take Saka one-on-one and say that you're going to win that. And remember, because as a defender, I can tell you that sometimes you can have a superb game, incredible game for 85 minutes, 89 minutes, right? But all it takes is that you get beaten once in a game by somebody like Saka, and then all of a sudden everybody's looking at you and saying, well, he didn't mark him. So it's you need a lot of help, and that's what Saka is. I mean, I often use this. I don't know if it's a complete player, but as close as it comes for a winger in that position. Not many out there that would take over him.
Manchester City is the only domestic team that's taken something from the Emirates. So you can't really judge West Ham on going to Arsenal and make assertions and assumptions based on that. But they've only won one of their previous 6 if you don't. And I think you and I both like to talk football. I think you and I could still be speaking after Chelsea-Liverpool about this game, and West Ham probably still wouldn't have scored. How worried are you about West Ham and staying up? Because that's 19th in the Premier League. Or is it far too early for Nuno Espirito Santo and his West Ham project to be judged?
Yeah, very worried. Yeah, of course, I'm not going to judge Nuno in this one because it's too early. I don't see any changes yet, to be quite honest. West Ham as a club baffles me. I see no difference. They want to be a big club, right? But if you want to be a big club, you gotta play football. You gotta try to play football, and they haven't done it on the Potter, in my opinion. And here, I mean, they just came in and defended deep, and there was, almost nothing that they've offered. Even a player like Jared Bowen, who's the only one that you can kind of single out as one that performs all the time and often saves this team. I didn't see him today. I didn't look at his stats, didn't have time, and what he did or didn't do, but nobody did anything. So yes, it worries me a lot. But as you said, Nuno just got there, and I suppose he's also pragmatic. He's shown at Wolves that he's capable of. But if you want West Ham to go to the next level, it makes you wonder if Nuno is this sort of he should at Wolves, he showed at Forest, right? But at Spurs, kind of so it makes you wonder what their objective is. It's almost kind of clear that just stop the bleeding, really.